So I got Bill on. So let me give you a proper introduction of Bill, because Bill, I think there's a lot of new people that are on the call. I think, if you were here a couple of years ago, you would have seen Bill more frequently. Bill kind of led the charge with training for Equis. But I've known Bill a long time. Matter of fact, it goes back to like 2012. This is interesting. So I'll tell you a story. 2012, I actually met Bill for the very first time. We were at a insurance convention. So, it sounds as fun as it is. And we were at John Kite, which is another Integrity Partners house. We were at John Kite's house. And Bill and I have talked about this a million times, but I thought John's house was the coolest house. He had a fan that hung from his ceiling that had two blades that went the opposite side way. I thought it was just the coolest thing. And I remember that being kind of my introduction to Bill. Bill and I sat there. Bill was well known in the industry, was always a big producer inside the industry. And so Bill and I kind of met there, knew each other for a while, ventured our own ways for a temporary separation, if you will. He started doing his own thing. I started my own thing, but ended up running back together with Equis. And helping Equis become a powerhouse in the industry. And then, and ultimately Bill ended up becoming a partner in Integrity Marketing. And just shortly after that, I became a partner with Integrity as well. And so, but I asked Bill to get on the call today. I was like, hey, you don't see Bill very often anymore. And rightfully so. He's put in his time. And now he deserves the right to go spend time with his grandbabies and his family and do his thing. And he still does some trainings on Equis's calls from time to time. But I was like, you know what, Bill, I want to get you on the call. I wanted to do something very specific. So the next couple of weeks, I'm going to get some more people on the call, but I wanted to start off with Bill, because I think a lot of times when you hear these calls, a lot of it, we really always talk about these people who are just going out and conquering the world. Like, hey, be like this person and just go out and kill the world. And just giving example after example of people who are having great success. But with that success came a lot of heartache and a lot of stair stepping to get to that success. And I think sometimes we fall short of showing people that. And so I was like, Bill, I just want to ask you questions. I'm not going to talk to him much about being a partner with Integrity. If you want to go learn more about Bill, go to Integrity Marketing's website, click on Bill's pretty picture, and you can read more about Bill on his picture and his bio. But I was like, let's jump back to when you started, you were running a travel agency, and then you got an insurance, and let's talk about that. And let's talk about when you first started dialing leads and were there some struggles. Let's talk about when you started Equis and you actually, most people don't know. I was talking to someone like 10 minutes prior to this, and I was like, I had Bill on, and he, most people don't realize when Equis got started, Bill probably ran more business than 99% of the people that were out writing for Equis at that point. And just unbeknownst to most people in Equis that he was doing, because they had to fund the company. And so most people don't realize that. So Bill, I appreciate you getting on the call. I know we don't get you on enough, but we appreciate you getting on the call. And let's chat. Let's wrap a little bit. Can you kind of give everybody your introduction to the insurance world back when you were doing the traveling agency, and go from there?
Well, it was actually before that. So that kind of came in the halfway into my career in the insurance industry. And thank you. And I got go way back with a lot of your folks, Jared. Very tight with a lot of your team, always have been. And you and I go way back. And I think it was actually before 2012 when we first met. It might have been 11 even, but actually, Jared, I got started in 1982. And in the insurance business in Texas, in Houston, Texas. Just answered an ad, make $1,000 a week, leads. And so I got started in that business after I got out of the military, and I was only looking to just make a decent income. And answered that ad and started in the business, and I was in the business for many years, up until the mid 90s. And in the mid 90s, my brother had started a tour company, and he had asked me to join him as a partner in that company. And so I joined with him and was in that business for about 7 years. But while I was in the insurance business, I was in health insurance, life insurance, estate planning, et cetera. I did pretty much all of it. Annuities, you name it. Did annuity seminars, all that. and only joined with my brother because he offered me a partnership, and it was an exciting business that we got involved in. And then 9/11 hit and changed our business world. We were doing group senior tours, and so that business kind of dried up. Nobody was taking tours anywhere. Got my license again in 2004 after we dissolved our business in 2004. Just got my license and started looking, and I stumbled onto the mortgage protection business in 2005, and that's where, of course, you and I met in the other company, and was familiar with lead programs, but nothing like that. I kind of looked at it like a rinky-dink lead program initially because I didn't realize how powerful it was. Once the light bulb clicked for me in early 2006, I never looked back. I've never found anything that allowed me, Jared, to be able to just put my effort into it, and really just the hard work and grinding it down and working your hiney off that created the results that I was able to create. I think a lot of people, and certainly all the time I had in the insurance business prior to that, there's so many things out there in the insurance business. It's easy to get distracted, right? And try this now. Let's go try that. I see that with people here at our company too, Jared, right now. I see people, they get started and they do pretty well with our system. And you're going to smile at this because it happens. You've seen it plenty of times. And they get started with their system, but then they get distracted. Oh, they hear about this over here, that over there. Instead of just making something work for a period of time, and then maybe decide whether you should divert your attentions to a higher level, a type of sales, or a different type of sales, or whatever. And I just see that distraction happen. Well, I didn't get distracted. I just saw it for what it was. It was kind of I looked at it as a conveyor belt mentality as far as being the producer and then growing a team. There was two paths, and you could take both paths at the same time, and you could build an organization and you could fund it with your personal production. And that's what I grasped onto when I first got started in the business. But initially, for the first 5 or 6 months in this business in 2006, I was hammering down personal production. Started building an organization towards the end of the year, became a manager in the fall of 2006, and you had to do like 50,000 a month, and I think you had to have, I forgot what it was at that time, 8 or 12 producers in your organization, and so I just stayed on that course. To look at where we're at now and what happened with it, did I ever envision that? Probably not. I mean, at that point, I was just strictly trying to get my feet back on the ground financially. After we left the tour business, life got pretty rough. I got a family of 6, my kids and my wife and I, and all the responsibilities with that. Well, it got pretty rough financially. And so all I was trying to do is get corrected, get back to a point where I could start paying cash for everything instead of paying for everything through credit cards. And so that was my only goal, and it didn't take long. And some people think, well, I watch you, Bill. I've heard this before too, Jared. Years ago, I used to do the live dial training here at Equis, and people go, "You just make it look so easy." Well, how do I put this? When I started out, all I was doing was just trying to get, like I said, financially corrected. I had to do the work, put it in the work, in order for those results to happen. So I had to learn how to make phone calls. It didn't come naturally to me. Okay. How did I learn? I made a lot of mistakes. I made so many mistakes in the field and so many mistakes on the phone when I first got into the business, but I didn't quit. I realized very early on that there was a way to make money here because it was simply a numbers game. Once I realized it was truly a numbers game, the numbers were going to be in my favor if I just put the effort and time into it. Once that hit for me, I never looked back. It was just simply a formula. And so, mistakes that I made in the field were embarrassing. I mean, I went back to one house. It was early on in 2006. I had gone to the same house 5 times to get different signatures. You'll laugh. It was with foresters because back then everything was a paper and you had to go back and get a form for this, form for that. They had a lot more forms than they even do now. And I had to go back to the same house 5 times. Back and forth. I made no money on that case, obviously, because of all the back and forth and time I spent and gas and everything. Just mistake after mistake after mistake, and also on the phone, getting hung up on, etc. But through that process, because I didn't quit, I was able to learn some things, right? And I was able to process some things and able to get to the point where I could articulate it, where I could actually teach it to people how not to make those same mistakes. And it was just a matter of just not quitting and not giving up. I wasn't going to let go of this deal because I realized I could make money. There's a lot of deals out there that pretend they can make money. It looks like you can make money for a short period of time, but in the long run, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. But in this particular program, I knew I could make money, and I tried a lot of stuff. I mean, you guys have to understand how many different things that I chased. I was that hound dog running down the road, and a rabbit would run in front of me, and I'd go that direction, this direction, because I was just trying to make a living for my family. I was trying just about anything I could do just to make a living for my family. So once I realized that there is a formula here, it was on. I mean, nothing could get in my way. There's no way you could have gotten me out of the business at that point. Now, to say, then why did you leave where you were at? Okay. Well, people have different philosophies on how they run their business and what their end goals are. And those philosophies in that other business just didn't fit what I was about. And also with Rob. And that's why we then kind of moved to another direction and started Equis. Now, when we started Equis, did we know it was going to turn out like it did? Not even close. We were simply trying to put together a program for whatever agents were attracted to us, whatever agents were attracted to our philosophy and our design, whoever that may be. It didn't really matter to Rob and I, because you know why? Rob and I already knew we could make a living on our own pen for the rest of our lives. We already knew that. Okay. We already proven that. Rob and I were running buddies at the other company. We had very similar production. We had very similar thought process, etc. We just had a lot of things in common, and we hit it off. And so when we started the company, we just said, let's just see what happens. But we both knew that we could actually make a living on our own. And you brought up the point about us running production. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people on your team do, because I've gotten to know them over the years. That we were the two primary pushers of production the first few months. And here's the crazy part. A lot of people don't know this. We took our own money and we're doing lead drops with our money. So we put this money out there, do the lead drops, right? When the leads came in, we were buying those leads that we already paid for out of our own pocket when the leads came in. And then we were running production, and the company overrode our production. And that was early on, before Barry got started with us in January of 2016, up until that point, because we actually launched our company in July of 2015. And I don't know if I've ever worked harder in my entire life, mainly out of fear. We wanted a business to work, etc. We were making enough money for our families, but as far as the production needed to get the company going at that time, we had offices, we had employees, all those things. We had all the costs involved in running a business and putting the leads, buying the lead drops and all of that. There was a lot of expenses coming up with we weren't necessarily profiting from it at all at that point. It was quite a while before we actually saw some return money on the business. So it was mainly out of fear. And I think there was even talks where if it didn't work, we were just going to continue to sell. We could just continue to sell and make a living for ourselves and our family. So there was a lot of fear. And I mean, I talked to Cheryl about it a few times, and she said, I don't know if I've ever seen you work harder than those months when you were getting the thing started. It was terrifying. Okay. But I think that most people that go through things in life, Jared, and accomplish something, look back at it and say, you realize what you paid for. Because people ask me nowadays, how does it feel? You're an equity partner and all this with integrity and so on and so forth. And I say, well, I don't apologize for any of that, because I paid my dues. If you want to look back and how many hours I was on the road or on the phone back in the early days, even before we started the company. I don't even know how you measure it because you really don't even calculate hours because you get up in the morning, you leave your house at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, you get home at 11 o'clock, and then you start all over again the next day. And you do it over and over and over and over again. And you don't really, you're just focused on a goal and trying to accomplish something instead of measuring it. Too many people measure. I hear that all the time. How many hours did you I don't know. It didn't matter to me. I mean, it was just a matter of accomplishing something in our lives and building something and realizing that along the way, there was a lot of people that resonated with what we felt like, what we thought like. And so it even drove us even harder to build something for everybody, right? That's what we tried to do from the beginning. That's what we years ago we used to call it the agents company. We still do a little bit, but I'm just saying that we wanted to build it so people could actually have a platform they could develop and build and grow an organization that fit what they were looking for. Now you can't please everybody. You're not going to be able to make something that everybody's happy with. It just isn't going to happen. But you can put together as best you can a company that resonates with a lot of people and they feel comfortable with you. You know, one of the things that we're prideful about is we just don't hear a lot of people. I mean, in other organizations, not going to say any names, you hear all the stuff that's going on in some of these other companies. I'm really proud of what we built. I was talking to Barry about that this weekend, that we can be very proud of what we built here because there's a lot of people that you know like our company and like being around us and have been with us a lot of years. To me, that's a testament that we did some things right. You know, that we put together a company that people can look at and trust and feel like this is the place I want to be. And they've been with us a long time, including yourself, obviously. And we hear about other companies and people just jumping, off the ship every other day, it seems like. And so that's something to be proud of. We're just very happy with what we were able to put together here, Jared.
Dude, when you're sitting there reminiscing on stuff, and I get fascinated, right? Because I just look at it and I sit there and think about the years put into stuff, right? Like I just think about that, the years that we put into things, or the years that you put into stuff, and I just go, when people sit there and reminisce on that, you sit there and see the truth come out of it. You go, like, I love hearing Bill talk about like running scared, like, because I think, Bill, that's far too often. That's what causes complacency in people in their businesses, is they just stop running scared. They go
Yeah.
and they get some money, they get a couple big paychecks, or they have a couple a good year, and they go, hey, I'm just going to sit back and kind of cruise control. And I think that's when you start seeing the decline in their business. And when you talk about, like, listen, we can talk about the beginning when you guys started Equis and I joined on with you guys, and we were traveling around, and dude, I mean, listen, PSI funded everything and wasn't making anything for a while. And like, I was just like, dude, I would red eye at home, go around the country. I was everywhere. But it was one of those things where it's like, like, I was talking to, there's a new girl who's starting with us. She's coming from another company, and she's asking a ton of questions. She's like, I don't want to be a bother. And I'm like, if people knew that how much that wasn't a bother to me, because all I remember when I was young in this industry was, man, I just want people to answer questions for me so that I can go out and do it. And when I tell people, like Bill, you were like, hey, we just went out and sold. We didn't track, like, oh, you know what, how many hours you were. I don't know. I have no, I couldn't to this day tell you how many hours I worked in a given week ever, because to me, it was just like, hey, I got to just make stuff happen. I didn't care what it was. I just, it didn't matter if it was 20 hours one week or 100 hours the next. I just had to go. And so I like hearing you talk about that, especially when it comes to the early days of dialing leads and running appointments and messing up apps. Like, that was the one thing this girl said to me. She was like, hey, do you just recommend people watching videos? And I was like, yeah, sure. But it's really a trial and error business. Like, when you said, like, I had to run back to this house like a bunch of times to get that, like, listen, I'm with you. I don't know how many times I had to go back to houses sometimes, because you would forget something and you go, and back then, now it's all digital, Bill, that people got it. They have no clue how easy it is compared to how 10 years ago, the difference, because 10 years ago, you had one calculator was on your phone for each carrier, or if not a paper sheet. And
Yeah.
if it was a digital calculator, by God, you would be in a house and that stupid thing would have to update. And of course, no one had Wi-Fi 10 years ago. Like people don't realize no one had Wi-Fi 10 years ago. You had to plug a cord in to get a stupid update and your calculator wouldn't work. So then you're scrambling and calling anybody you can just to get a quote. And so I like you just don't pay attention to that. And that's the best mentality because you'll never know what you can accomplish if you just, there's a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, Bill, but I'm sure you have. His name's David Goggins. I don't know if you've that name. He talks about like his workout regimen and how he's ran the 100-mile marathons like week after week in a row. And he talks about lifting and running and what a human body can do. And he said the only real limitation is the fact that your brain gets in the way and tells you when you're in pain. Like if you just don't pay attention to those receptors and you just keep pushing through, it's amazing what you can actually take on. And that's how this is no different than what you were just talking about with this industry, right? Like you were like, hey, Rob and I knew we wanted something better. We knew we were going to have to run. We knew we were going to have to fund the company. Who knew what it was going to take, right? You never, if you went back to 15, you would have never known you were going to be an integrity partner by 2020. I mean, listen, 5 years is a freaking bona fide studly time frame to go from starting a company to selling to the largest in the world, period. Like that is ridiculous. And so but you had no idea. You just push forward with it. Question. So when you started, and I want to talk about leads because I think I think leads is a miscalculation sometime of what a lead is. And I tell people all the time, I said, like, listen, regardless if you get your leads from the Integrity Center, from the Equis Opt Center, from any center in general, the point of a lead is to get a person on a phone. If it's not like this girl I was talking to came from a company that mails out. I'm gonna give away where she came from in just a second, but they mail out child abduction kits, and that's how they get people to respond back, and then they bait and switch them into insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a true lead,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lead is like Bill's commitment with leads is to get people on a call. Like if you call and it rings and they answer, that's a lead. Like it's not meant to book itself. It's meant to get them on the phone. Now your job is to book the appointment. Bill, do you ever remember in your lifetime of doing calls that it's been any different than that?
No, and you know what? You bring that up. I want to go back to when I first got in the business, and they were advertising leads, and it was a newspaper ad because there was no internet back then, Jared. And I don't. Oh, you born yet? I don't think you were born yet. You might have been born. It was 82. I remember answering the ad, and they said leads. I didn't know what a lead was. What do you mean leads? So what they were doing, Jared, they would have a telemarketing office call people and say, hey, are you aware of the benefits you're entitled to under the ERISA law, Employees Retirement Income Security Act? And they would say either yes or no. Well, we'll have one of our representatives out to your house tomorrow night between 7 and 8. That was a lead. They'd put the name on there. They'd ask what the person's occupation was. So people were thinking, okay, I get some tax qualifications through my checking account or something like that. What it really was a tax deferred insurance policy that we were selling as a savings plan with a death benefit. Savings plan with a death benefit. I did not know I was selling insurance for 90 days. The reason I didn't know is because in Texas at that time, you could get a temporary license without actually taking the exam, as long as you didn't have a felony. And so they'd give you a temporary license, and then you had to go take your insurance license exam and all that. So 90 days, I was selling a savings plan with a death benefit. Then I realized I was selling insurance. About killed my career. And so the crazy part is that's the kind of lead that I was always associated with, something like that, like a bait and switch. When I realized how powerful these leads were, and it clicked with me because of all my years of cold calling and trying anything to get in the door. I mean, I remember one time I had this for 6 months, I made a living of calling old leads that I had from health insurance that were for small business owners who were wanting to buy health insurance. And I had several health insurance licenses, worked for a company that provided leads for that. Well, I kept all those leads. And so for 6 months, when Cheryl and I first got married, I was calling those leads just because I knew they were a small business owner and they good chance they might need a life insurance policy or a disability income policy. And they were 2 years old. I was calling them because I had their name of their business, and their phone number. And I would say, hey, I'm going to be out in your area. I'm going to show you a benefit package. I was just making something up on the fly and getting in the door that way. But what I realized through all of that process was how powerful a true lead really is and what do people want. So as you've heard me do this many times because you traveled with me and Rob so much, and I talked about it all the time, was that I believe that everybody at some point in their life is looking for life insurance. I don't care if you have kids, don't have kids, or whatever. Somebody one day wants a burial policy, but you just got to figure out when is that time you're going to connect with them when they need it. I don't know. If you call enough people, you're going to find at the right time, somebody's going to say, you know what? We were thinking about a life insurance policy. I promise you could sit on a street corner and you could just solicit 60 people in about a 6 or 8 hour period, and you'd walk out with 3 or 4 leads because there's going to be 3 or 4 people in those 60 that's going to say, as a matter of fact, we were thinking about life insurance just the other day. It's kind of funny that you said that. So if that's true, that's true, that there are a number of people. Well, if we have some other solicitation that can narrow that down for us, so all we got to do is call those people that raise their hand. That's what our lead program does, Jared. All we're looking for is a person that says, I might be interested in talking to you. In
Dude,
other
it's
words, right?
Bill, you know, like when you're talking about that, I'm sitting there going, I started in '09. You remember '09, right?
Yes.
'09 was like it looked eerie similar to how it looks right now,
Yeah.
by the way, like almost exactly.
Yes.
And I remember my first month, by the way, I failed my insurance license like it seemed like a million times before
Yeah.
I passed it. So if you passed in your first try, great, you're an overachiever. I'm just normal. And so I remember like going out, I netted $17,000 my first month. You know where we were at and what
Yeah.
we were doing at that point.
Yes.
I netted 17,000. People go, how'd you do it? I was like, dude, you don't understand. Like if you're filthy rich, then you can be selective on where you want to eat.
Right.
When you're begging for scraps, McDonald's has to do.
Yep.
And to me, sometimes people get into a fillet lobster mentality before they're ready to get out of McDonald's. And I'm going like in 17 or in 2009, 17 grand, my first month, I worked every day I could work. I didn't care. I worked all
Yeah.
the time and I made a ton of money that first month. But the whole point behind it was like, I didn't care what anybody said on the phone. They'd say, "No, I'm not interested." Okay, no worries. I just got to get the information over to you. They'd say, "All right, got to take care of it." Perfect. My job is just
Yep.
get the information over to you. Like I would just constantly be scheduling like a time for people to be there. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like, and I'd show up, and that's all that mattered to me was just showing up and having somebody to talk to. And then when I was there, I just like I was like, hey, listen, you know, if they had a policy, I would just figure out how I could beat them, show them better value. If they didn't have a policy, I would try to figure out exactly what the best options were for them. I mean, dude, it didn't matter to me, but but at that point, I was starving for my life. You know what I mean? Like, I just had to go out. I was scared to death. I was starving for my life. So when you're sitting there talking about like calling clients from old health clients that you had, I'm like, and by the way, that's my Siri talking on my computer. I have no idea why. So if you hear a lady talking in my mic, that's Siri. But I'm just telling you, like to me, I'm like, I didn't care what I had to do. So I love that mentality. See, how about this, Bill? How do you get people thinking like that again? That's what I want to know from you. Tell me how to get people thinking like that again.
Yeah, I think it comes down to this. For me, if I'm trying to get a message across to everybody, is what do you want in the next 5 years? What do you want in the next 10 years? Do you want to have control of your world and your business? Because if you want to have control of those things, that's what you're going to have to do, is have that mentality that it's really just going to boil down to who cares what kind of effort or time you're going to put into it. You're compartmentalizing everything down to a system that you're putting in place of activity. Because The cool thing about what we've done, and you were in the beginning, so you knew how scrappy everything was and just putting pieces together to make everything work with us to where we have the system nowadays. It's just like, it's so plug and play. It's like crazy compared to the way we got started in the business, that all you really have to do is have set a schedule aside and a determination, and you're going to put this together and hammer down your activity to get to the end result. I think it really boils down to this. Like I said, what is your plan? What do you want to accomplish in the next 5 years? Some of these people that have been with us too for 6 or 7 years, I'm asking them the same question. What is your plan? Where do you want to be 5 years from today? Are you where you wanted to be today from where you were 5 years ago? Did you accomplish that threshold? And what is the next level going to be? Because really, you can put together your own system. You said something earlier that I do believe is happened to us at Equis a little bit, is that we have made it fairly simple. It's not easy, simple to make decent amount of money here. And with that comes a little bit of complacency. If you're okay with that, we're okay with that. But if you're frustrated that you've not reached the goals that you intended to reach 3, 4, 5 years ago, why not? Well, more than likely, it's just a matter of this. You don't have the blinders on. You haven't become numb to the process, and you haven't put the blinders on to focus on that target. Start with a target a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, hit that threshold and even bounce forward from that. It's funny, Jared. I want to say this as candidly as I can. I've heard rumors, and I hear it once in a while. People say, well, there really isn't much opportunity anymore since the partnerships, the people that got their partnerships. What chance do I have of getting an integrity partnership? It's crazy. Our system's so much better than what it was even before we had a partnership with integrity. If you didn't know about this partnership, what difference would that make? How has that changed anything that's happened in reality here about your opportunity here at Equis Financial? Does that make sense? I mean, it's like you're 4 years ago, before you knew about integrity, you were focused on a goal and trying to grow something. How has that changed?
Bill, in
Does that
09,
make sense?
oh, dude, in 09, I remember coming into this industry in 09, and you were in the industry. There was behemoths in the industry when I came into this industry. I remember going to a conference. They wouldn't even talk to me. I was a peon that had a mismatched suit and dingy clothes, right? But I remember people like, this is the pinnacle of the career, and these are the people who own that pinnacle. And what's crazy is, like, those, I've surpassed more of those people than I know what
Right.
to do with. But it had everything to do with, I didn't care who was where. I just wanted to go there. You know what I mean? And I think that goes back to what you just said. It was like, hey, listen, forget about what you think you are. If you're brand new, like I'll tell you, if you're brand new, it's a better time to start than the veterans who are on this call right now. And I'll tell you why, because the veterans on this call are jaded by their past experiences. You are unadulterated, untainted. You just have to go out there and do what you got to do right now, because the problem is you're going to go through, you're going to get attached to the system. You're going to start dialing the leads. You're going to start making money. Then when the economy changes, which it always does, when it changes back and stuff starts going crazier than it already is, you're going to go up. Your trajectory is going to skyrocket. But it's the veteran people who get jaded by what has happened that end up getting screwed up in this world. And that's what happened in 09, Bill. In 09, same thing happened. The world's cyclical. It's going to go up and down all the time. There was people in this world that were at the top of the food chain that died because they could not modify and adapt and move. And then I came in and I started just cruising by people like they were standing still. And I was nobody. I was a 28-year-old kid that just wanted to go out there and make a ton of money as fast as I could. And the other thing, and I'll tell you this, and let me give y'all a big tip right here. Bill can attest to this. Do not for a second take a break right now. Don't take a break. If you're young in this industry, don't take a break, because everybody is taking breaks right now. That my first 24 months, I didn't take a break at all. My first 24 months, I ran harder than everybody else, which is why now I'm an integrity partner. and I don't have to worry about anything. But it was because I didn't take a break. And I see young guys taking breaks after they made a couple grand here and there. And I think they're crazy, Bill. I think they're crazy. I'm like, I would never take a break. Not until I remember my first trip was 2 years after you were on that trip with me. We went to St. Martin.
Mhm.
And that was my first trip I ever went on. And it was 2 years after I started. It was my first vacation I had in 2 years. And then I never looked back from there. So, I mean, dude, I love what you're saying. I just think I think we are in a pivotal time to make huge things happen in the industry. But I think it's going to be fresh, invigorated people who aren't used to what the industry looks like, because understand the industry is constantly going to move all around. The one thing that's still true, Bill, is this industry. I mean, what was it? $28 billion in insurance sales Integrity did last year. People are still buying insurance, by the way, in the tune of $28 billion from our company last year. Don't think the industry is changing. It's still $1 trillion industry. I mean, it still makes tons of money. It's just whether or not you make it or someone else makes it, right, Bill?
The people are out there. It's interesting that you say that. I remember they go over these statistics all the time when we go to our meetings. We've heard it at various conferences and whatnot about the numbers of people. You can go to the insurance industry statistics, and they'll tell you how many people have insurance, how many are uninsured, et cetera. When I first got started in the business, it's the same number. The same percentage of people that didn't have insurance back then, the same number of people that don't have insurance now. It's such an underserved business, right? And so it's never going to stop. People are getting born, they're turning 18 every single day, right? They're putting themselves in a position that they're responsible now. People are getting to the 65, 70s. So you've got that other end of that market. I mean, I can remember first getting into the business, and all these insurance guys are going, you just wait till the baby boomers start retiring. Well, I'm one of them, right? And you just wait till they start retiring. The biggest transfer of wealth in the history of the world. That's true. That's going on for the next 10 years still. All these people that are retiring over the next 10 years. In addition to all the new people coming up, the industry just feeds into that. There's so much opportunity. You're only limited by your own thoughts. I want to tell you this, as far as the LEAD program is concerned too, it doesn't matter to me what the lead looks like, right? All you're really looking for is an opportunity to open the door. Believe it or not, one of the lead programs, this was called a lead program I was introduced to, I don't know how many years ago. We were walking around, this is long before IULs and all that. It's back when interest rates and universal life were at 16, 17%. And my manager had me walk around with this clear plastic folder, and inside it was an illustration of a UL of a universal life product of a 35-year-old male putting in $80 a month or whatever. And it was at 16% interest. And through the magic of compound interest, this dude had like 900,000 by the time he was 65 years old, right? And I would walk around with this. This is what I was supposed to do. Just meet strangers on the street. Hey, do you have a cash value insurance policy? Oh, what do you mean? A whole life cash? Yeah. If they said yes, you'd show them this illustration. And in that illustration was $100 bill. And I'll give you that $100 bill if I can't beat your current whole life policy. That was back in the early 80s. That was our lead program. Well, I mean, it's crazy, but it worked.
Dude,
right?
it's just people. It's just people. It's just talking to people. Yeah. Like, listen, there's tons of leads. We got tons of leads. That's not the question. There's a ton of leads. But but it's trial and error, and it's just figuring out the best niche. I saw an email come across of somebody who said, hey, the leads aren't as good as they were a year ago. And I'm like, dude, people are still people. Just talk to somebody. And if somebody's not booking an appointment with you, you suck. Fix your script, get back at it. Like modify, adapt, or die. Like, that's it.
I would say that person, not to interrupt you, you're softer than you were a year ago.
Dude, listen, man, you don't have to tell me that. You can say it, but that's the truth. Is people get soft. And I'm going like, dude, it's the grinder mentality that makes it happen in this world. And then when you see people that don't have a results because they're not grinding, it's just they're not grinding. And it's interesting, Bill, Chuck was here and we were doing some recordings. And by the way, Bill, anytime you want to come into the studio and rap back and forth for a couple hours,
by the way, I have not seen this. I'm in.
Yeah, come in. Chuck and I were having fun. We were sitting there talking, but Chuck was asking me a question. I thought it was a great question. He's like, hey, what do you think is the biggest issue And I said, biggest issue people run into. And I said, dude, let me tell you, I run into it. I'm just as guilty. Here it is. And this goes back to what we were talking about. Like, you have steps in your progression of how you become an agent or sales or anything you do. There's always a step process, right? It's like step 1, step 2, step 3. And there's not, like, it's not physically written down. So don't be texting me going, hey, what's step 1?
Yeah.
It's like, you got to learn how to sell. You got to learn how to close. You got to learn how to dial. You got to learn how to overcome objections. Those are steps in the process, right, Bill? And I said, what happens to people is they get step by step and they get to a step, and then they forget that they have to continue to do the steps that got them there all the same time. So you still got to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Like, if you get to step 5 and then you stop doing step 1 through 4, your business is going to implode, right? Like, so if you think you're good at sales, but you're not overcoming objections on the phone, or you're not getting in a house and you're doing a proper warm up, or you're getting people to smile at you and do the things work with connecting, you can't just go to 5 and go for the close and think that 1 through 4 aren't going to play effect into that. And I was like, that's the same way your business. Like, you started selling, and then you start recruiting, which is step 1, step 2, and you're building your agency. But then you forget that step 1 is still important, which is go fund your business. And then they just think that they can stick in step 2, and then all of a sudden their business falls apart. And you go, what the hell happened? You'd be like, well, you forgot step 1. And I said, Chuck, I do it all the time. Like, Bill's done it too. Equis has done it too. Integrity's done it too. You forget sometimes that you got to continue to do the step process, which is 1, 2, 3. And you got to listen, you got to write them down, write the dang steps down, and remember, like, hey, today I got to go sell. Then I got to recruit. Then I got to talk to people. Then I got to do this. Then I got to do this. I mean, Bill, does that make sense? Like, you just forget the steps because sometimes you just get so entangled in what's the next part of it that you forget to do all the rest of it.
You know what simplified it for me? And people, ask me what kept you going and so on, and how did you just keep doing this? Because it gets tough sometimes and whatever, you got to do all this. And I'm thinking, I said, okay, I watched my father for many years. We had 7 in our family, and he was making $1 an hour when I was a kid, and he was working in a factory. And it was a wire factory. He smelled like this wire smell. Never forget it. And the factory smell. He'd come home every day. He worked 7 days a week. And he did this process of just working this press in the wire factory for many years. And when I'm out in the field and I'm sitting here griping about driving or being in the snow, or I got cold called, I get out there and nobody showed me or whatever, I would think about what he did in that process, mundane, to feed his family. I go, I've got it made. How could it be anything worse than what he went through? That I have stood up, or I had a flat tire or whatever, or somebody hung up the phone on me. And that always motivated, because there's lots of people out there who work in factories and build our country, and they do the same thing for 35 years to get to retirement. I might have to hammer down for 15 years and do some crazy stuff for 15 to get there 30 years or 20 years faster than they did. Oh my gosh, that's just so horrible.
Dude,
And that's how I got through.
Listen, man, I think I think more than anything in the world, I've been as blessed as you can get. I mean, I started in 2009, and in the end of 2020, I sold my company.
Crazy. It's
And
crazy.
I go, dude, if I had to go back and do it over and over again, I would. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's step by step. You just don't pay attention to the stuff. And you just, and by the way, turn your ears off. Don't listen to the garbage that comes out of people's mouths.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, just go out and grind it out. Bill, hey, listen, you and I will, like, Bill and I have traveled with each other for years and years. So we could talk for hours. So Bill, I appreciate you getting on the call, man. I loved it. This call is going to be recorded. So, or his recorded, and it's going to be posted up. But dude, thanks. Please come into the studio anytime you want. We'll sit there and go after
wait till the
for
humidity subsides and when I come back down.
I know you're in Michigan now, but eventually you'll be back in Florida.
I'll be back down there. Yeah.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. Have a good one, man. Thanks for everybody for getting on. Great week. Let's go do it again. Have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.